Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to World War III. I want to get to the Russia-Ukraine conflict. I want to get to Vladimir Putin saying the talks are quote-unquote going well, which is completely ridiculous. There will never be an agreement between Russia and Ukraine based upon what Russia wants and what Russia demands right now. I'll analyze that. I also want to get to the Biden administration and just the ridiculous excuse-making and this new culture within all of these different presidential administrations where it's just excuse after excuse. There's no accountability. We're going to get to that. But the first thing I wanted to talk about was kind of a new idea. And this is an idea that I originally had thought of about a year and a half ago before any of this war broke out or even Russian troops going onto the border of Ukraine. This was a while ago, kind of a buffer, kind of a way to protect America, protect the world against nuclear power. And the reason I originally thought of this idea was because I would keep listening to these different podcasts, these different, YouTube videos, things like that, where they would say, well, if, Russia launches a nuke, America's going to launch one, and all it takes is one. And once one nuke gets launched, we're basically, possibly looking at the extinction of humanity. And it's just that barbaric, type of thinking that got me thinking there should be a safeguard to all of this. We should instill something to massively discourage the use of any nuclear weapons. Now, there's a lot of stuff to get to when it comes to this, but what I would propose would be something called an ANA, Anti-Nuclear Agreement. You could call it an A&W agreement, Anti-Nuclear World Agreement. And what I would do if I was Biden or, a U.S., someone that passes these type of laws, I would go to every single country in the world and I would lay out something. And it doesn't even have to be titled an ANA or an A&W agreement. You could just say, this is a humanitarian act to where if you sign this, you agree if any country in the world launches a nuke, every country that signs this anti-nuclear agreement will fully commit to destroying the country that launched the nuclear bomb. So let's say Russia in this agreement, if we got everyone to join it, and obviously if we do an agreement like that right now, Russia's not going to join it, but that's fine. We don't need every country. It would be great to get China. We understand that. Worst case scenario, this agreement outlines the enemies. Because if you don't want to sign something like this, number one, I am just totally against nuclear war. And I understand it's going to sound hypocritical. I am American. We understand what America did at the end of World War II. That was a different set of circumstances. There's no excuse for it. You never should drop nuclear bombs on, civilian targets. We understand that. I think the United States offered every opportunity for the Japanese to surrender. I fully respect and the Japanese culture and the Japanese empire culture was so unbelievable. They said, no, you got to come invade us. And the United States was forced with a decision. Do we land invade Japan on all these different islands and fight, sort of jungle warfare against them, lose a bunch of soldiers when we have this newfound technology? And they obviously used it. The point of it is the United States has the biggest nuclear arsenal in the world right now. Does that really matter, though? If nukes start getting thrown around, if we have a little pissing contest on who has the most nukes? No, it doesn't matter. Humanity is going to face extinction if a nuclear war happens. So what I'm saying is even if it just lowers the chances of us facing that by 10%, we need to get some sort of safeguard in place. And this is nothing to do with NATO or, I did propose yesterday we do another NATO 2.0 with Japan and South Korea. That's to protect us against China. This is just an overall act to where you cannot use nuclear weapons, okay? Because with the amount of nuclear weapons, you can Google this stuff. Guys, the one thing I'll say, when you Google who has the most nuclear weapons, because I know people will do it, it says Russia does, and maybe they do. I highly doubt they do. But it's gotten to a point with the United States and China where they've just stopped reporting how many nukes they currently have. What good does it do to get that on public record? We know the United States has a ton of nuclear power. Whether they have 5,000 nukes, 7,000 nukes, it says they have around 5,000. It says Russia has the most nukes. Even if Russia has more nukes than the United States' overall nuclear power and nuclear capability is vastly greater than Russia. You would think that, obviously, with the amount we invest into the military. Also, the Chinese are smart enough to where it says right now they have 350 nukes or whatever. They've got way more than that. What is the benefit to telling your enemies how many nukes you have? What is the benefit of that? There's no benefit. And it also says China is actively expanding nuclear arsenal. They're actively expanding everything in their military right now. That's why we need a NATO 2.0 with the Pacific states, with South Korea, with Japan, to keep China at bay. NATO and these agreements, these military alliances, are to promote peacefulness. To where if you invade one of these countries, you're going to have multiple countries on your back ready to fight back for a certain country. So the more agreements we can get, the better. But when it comes to this nuclear, anti-nuclear world agreement, ANA, anti-nuclear agreement, something like that, I would just throw it around. I would see who signs it. I'm guessing all of NATO would sign it. And it's just like, what Russia's doing right now, you can say it's horrible. You can say war is terrible. We understand that. But it would be a completely different thing if they started dropping nuclear bombs on some of these cities in Kyiv, and Ukraine. It would be a completely different thing. It's one thing to invade these countries with your military, allow for citizens to get out. There have been reports that Russia's committing war crimes. I don't doubt it. I'm sure they are. That's just what happens when you invade another country, and especially when you invade another country that doesn't want to be invaded. You're going to probably end up with some civilian casualties. You're going to end up with some issues because the citizens are just not going to accept the invasion, and there's going to be conflict within that. So they probably are, I'm guarantee you they are committing war crimes of some sort, but at least there's no nuclear aspect that could seriously damage the overall standing of the world, the ozone layer, things like that. When you start dropping these nuclear bombs, the radiation that comes from these is ridiculous, and there needs to be some sort of world agreement. And if you don't agree to it, that will tell us who the bad guys are. Realistically, I would love to get every country, and I say this as an American, we have the most nukes in the world. Now, does that really matter that we have, a little bit more nuclear power than Russia and China? If everyone is dropping nukes, no, it doesn't matter. We need to be able to safeguard, even if it's just, again, 5 to 10% more of a safety net for citizens to feel a little bit more safer. Every time people talk about this, where it's just like, once one country drops a nuke, we're done. Like, what kind of Neanderthal type thinking is that? We should be able to at least put some safeguards in place. And there's a bigger point to all of this. This whole idea of Russia invading Ukraine and China wanting a bigger military and the United States spending almost $1 trillion on the military. This tells me, and this is, anyone would be able to see this, we have not evolved to our full potential as human beings. They expect when we fully evolve as human beings, Russia won't want land in Ukraine. It won't matter because we're all humans. The United States won't spend $1 trillion on the military and on protecting their country against other people because no one wants to invade the United States, and the United States can spend that money on innovation, on getting to space, on getting to other galaxies, things like that, on curing cancer. China wouldn't have to go through this massive military expansion. They would be spending stuff on innovation, but because we're human beings and we want more land, and Russia wants that Ukraine land, and they hate NATO, and we have to set up NATO because we have to protect ourselves, and the United States, spends all this money and stuff. It just goes to show you that when we eventually evolve, and I'm not talking about in our lifetimes or anything like that, I'm talking about like 1,000 years from now, the thought process is, it doesn't matter how much land you have. We're all human beings. The United States owning what they own, Ukraine owning what they own, China owning what they own. It doesn't matter. We're not trying to nuke each other. We're trying to evolve as a species and make this earth the best possible situation it can be. We're not there right now. We've got China rapidly expanding their military. We've got the United States innovating, spending $780 billion on the military. We've got Russia wanting to invade and take over Ukraine. We have not evolved, and we will not evolve to that point for thousands of years. It's not going to be, it's not like, in 20 years we're going to make it there, but it's just like, you can tell the human species right now is at a point to where we have not fully evolved. So we have to put safety nets in place. And the idea that people talk about nuclear war like it could really happen, with the amount we're advancing technology-wise, we really could blow ourselves up. There needs to at least be some safety nets where you make a treaty, an ANA type agreement, anti-nuclear agreement with every country that wants to sign it, which I would hope would be a lot to starve off nuclear war. Listen, if you invade a country, that's bad enough, but you can't nuke a country because that changes everything, right? And I know people say, well, you're hypocritical. World War II with Japan. We gave Japan the chance to surrender. They were going to lose anyways. We didn't want to land invade Japan and all those islands. They had the, crazy jungle warfare. And again, listen, we shouldn't have done it. You should have invaded. You're going to lose soldiers, but at least you shouldn't nuclear bomb, civilians and cities like that. I agree. I'm saying let's get away from that type of thinking. If you're going to invade somewhere, you got to do it like Russia's doing it right now. I'm not saying what Russia's doing is good, but at least they're, if you are going to invade another country, you need to use trained soldiers to do that. That's what you need to do. And then if there's war crimes, there's war crimes. But you cannot be nuking places. We need to give ourselves a safeguard against a potential nuclear war, to protect ourselves, to protect us from ourselves. To protect us from ourselves. So that would be my proposal. You would go around and you would say, if you sign this, you agree if any country launches a nuclear bomb, every country in this agreement will do everything possible to eviscerate that country because we want to make it so countries are extremely discouraged, no matter how desperate you are, from dropping nuclear bombs. The thought is Putin gets really desperate. He's getting up there in age. He's going to start a nuclear war. We're going to let a 70-year-old dude who's about to die start a nuclear war and kill a bunch of people? There needs to be safeguards to prevent something like this, folks. I'm sorry. Come on. We got, and people always say, well, they'll still drop the nukes anyways, but at least we have another safeguard to where we have this world agreement and all these countries sign. And then if China says we don't want to sign it, that's great for America because we need American people to understand that China is a major threat. And that would be a way to do it right now. I say this in all my videos about China. China is so smart. They have all these American corporations by their neck because they produce all their products in China, and it's very hard to get negative China type propaganda in America because these major corporations influence so much on social media with young people. The Nikes, the Apples, things like that, where they produce in China at a lower cost and then they ship here and they're in bed with the Chinese, and China is so smart. The most glaring and obvious kind of telltale sign of all of this was the pandemic. China started the frickin' pandemic. It spread everywhere. It killed hundreds of thousands of Americans. And you know what? It benefited China. That's how smart these people are because Americans turned on each other and it became this tribal Democrats versus Republicans. And that's how smart it is. Crazy. And guys, I'm telling you, we need an ANA. It's anti-nuclear agreement. Anti-nuclear agreement. You could call it the Humanity Act, something like that. I don't even want credit for it. Biden can do it. He can take credit. I'm just saying we need to develop something where you hear these people talking and it's like, oh, when Russia launches a nuke, the world's going to basically end because we're going to have to launch one. Then they're going to launch one. And we're really going to let a 70-year-old man kill the entire world? Like, what is that, folks? We need to set up an agreement within countries to where, listen, if you want to launch a nuke, your entire country is going to be wiped off the face of the earth. We don't deal with that. We do not deal with launching nukes. And I say that as someone who America does have the most nuclear power on Earth. It's not like we don't have any nuclear power and I want this to benefit America. No, we've got the most. But realistically, it doesn't matter. Oh, we've got 20 more nukes than Russia. It's not going to matter. If we just keep launching them back and forth, the amount isn't going to matter. So we're never going to get to a point, at least not right now, because we haven't evolved to it. We're not going to get a point to where everyone says there's no need for nukes in this world. It's ridiculous. Countries are still going to have nukes because they're going to think, well, if America, de-arms and de-escalates all of their nukes, China's still going to have nukes. Russia's still going to have nukes. We have not evolved. That's why you see Russia invading Ukraine. We want more land. We want your land. We can't say, you know what, we're all human beings. We can do this. We can do that. We can do this in a diplomatic fashion. No, we want to kill people because we want more land. We're not evolved yet. We're probably going to get there as long as we don't blow ourselves up. But again, this is not a situation where in 20 years we're going to start investing all of our money into the environment into certain things, but the whole thing with the environment and global warming, I talk about it endlessly. Again, if you're someone who thinks global warming is going to kill us within the next 100 years or 200 years, or our grandkids are going to suffer, you need to go to China and you need to focus on them, because America is doing their part with global warming. It's China who has doubled the CO2 emissions due to all their factories. They're the ones that are significantly worse than America. So why should we have to spend trillions of dollars on climate change when there's a country that's benefiting off of not enacting any of these laws, because they do all these factories, they've got all these American corporations in bed with them, and they don't get any negative press because all these major powerful corporations are getting held by, at the ballsack by the Chinese. So it's like, if you really want, and I'm telling you guys, every time I talk about politics, it's going to go back to China and it's going to go back to global warming, because it's the same thing. If you really care about global warming, China is the ones you need to talk to. It's not the United States. Now, the United States still has a lot to improve on, but let's get China to commit to something, and then we'll commit to it. How about that? But this is just the pissing contest. This is why we're not perfect humans. We want other people to do something when everyone just can't agree. Listen, this is good for us. This is good for us. There's no investment into innovation. There's no investment into finding new galaxies, finding other species of life out there. It's all, I want your country, you want my country. We'll go to nuclear war if we have to. Yeah, what does that lead to? I'm trying to stop that. That's why we need an ANA, anti-nuclear agreement. And this was something that I thought of over 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, something like that. And just because everyone would say, oh, if we have a scenario with World War III with the nukes we have now, we're just going to blow ourselves up. Well, can we not at least safeguard against that a little bit, to where we, discourage these countries and say, look, we're going to all sign a doctrine that pledges if anyone uses nuclear bombs, we're just going to destroy your entire country. Everybody will be against that country and will do whatever they can to destroy that country from the face of the earth. There needs to be a hard line against the use of nuclear firepower, because technology has gotten to the point where we seriously will blow ourselves up. And I cannot believe we don't have a major agreement similarly to NATO. It's the same thing. It's like, we need a NATO type agreement with the Pacific states, with South Korea, with Japan. If Japan gets attacked by China, we need to help Japan. That is not good. That is really not good. I would be more inclined to help Japan if they get attacked by China than I would be to help the European Union if they get attacked by Russia, because I have more faith that the European Union would be able to defeat Russia in a military war than Japan against China. And again, when you look at the military numbers, people Google the numbers. Oh, Russia has the most nukes. Realistically, it doesn't matter. The things that I know is America has the most nuclear power by far, and China also has way more nuclear power than they're saying, because they're smart. What's the point of even saying, oh, we don't just have 300 nukes, we've got 2,000. What's the benefit in making those numbers public? There's no benefit to it. There's no benefit to it, so that's why they don't. Some quick other things. You've got Putin saying there are positive changes in the Ukraine talks. There is zero chance right now, based on what Russia wants and what Ukraine is doing, there is zero chance these two countries are going to come to a diplomatic agreement. Zero chance. You just had the United States agree to send $13 billion in military aid to Ukraine, and Russia is talking to Ukraine saying you need to demilitarize yourselves, and then we'll accept an agreement. The only way I could see a possible agreement, I do believe Ukraine would agree if Russia said you need to recognize Crimea as Russian territory. I think they would agree to that. And then if Russia says all we want are the majority Russian-speaking districts to become part of the Russian Federation, meaning the two districts farthest to the east, which I think are backed by Russian separatists or something like that, those two districts become Russian, they would agree to that. But that's not what Russia wants. Russia wants, in the end, a full takeover of Ukraine and a capture of Kiev, the capital of Ukraine, and Ukraine, who just got $13 billion from the United States, is never going to agree to it. How do these talks work unless Russia drastically changes their demands? It's just not going to work. So Putin saying there's positive changes, it's all propaganda. It's all Russian propaganda. Putin's trying to show we want to get this done diplomatically. That's why we're talking with Ukraine. And then they make their demands, and it's like, you need to demilitarize yourself. They're just not going to do that. There's no way you can do that. You just got invaded. How would you be able to do that? And just another quick thing I wanted to talk about, the current culture within these administrations, and it's not just the Biden administration. It happened with Trump. I'm sure it happened with Obama, but I was really too young to follow it at the time, with the press secretary. And I don't blame this woman, the woman with red hair. We're both gingers. We got it. We stick together. That's fine. I don't blame the woman, but she is being literally told by the Biden administration, she's being told, listen, just make excuses. That's all she does. She gets asked about a question yesterday, I think, about the rise of gas. And instead of being accountable to the citizens of the United States and just, being honest and saying, listen, guys, you're paying way more for gas this year than you did last year, almost double. I understand it sucks. We're working on it. We're trying to get it down. I understand your frustration. Instead of being empathetic and being open to the American people, it's excuse after excuse. It's the pandemic. It's Putin. And it's like, we understand there are other circumstances that are causing the gas to go up, but it's just so fake, and there's just no accountability for the citizens, and it's so sad. And I'm not saying it's just a Democratic problem. It's with everyone in politics. There's just no, and it's not this woman. This woman is literally told, go up and make excuses for our administration. That's her job, to answer questions from the media and to make excuses instead of saying, guys, look, we're all human in this administration. We understand you're basically paying double for gas than you were last year. So if you were paying $30 to fill up your tank, now you're paying $50, $60 to fill up your tank. It sucks. We're working on it. There are other circumstances at bay. We're not making excuses. We understand your pain, and we are trying to fix it as fast as possible. There's just no accountability. Just be accountable, and it's just excuse after excuse. This is happening, the pandemic. We know there's other factors. We know Biden didn't hike up the gas prices to $6 by himself. We understand that. We're not stupid. But at the same point, just have some accountability, have some feelings for the American people. It's just excuse after excuse, and Republicans are going to say, oh, that's ridiculous. Democrats are going to say these are legitimate. We know how it works now. It's so tribal, and it's so sad within the United States politics, and so divided, Democrat versus Republican. The divide really got bad with Trump in office, where people hate him or love him, and now it's continued kind of during this social media day and age where there's such a divide, Democrat and Republican. And I saw that thing yesterday with the lady, just it's excuse after excuse. Just be accountable about it, man. That's all we want as American people, and it's not her fault. It's not, but she's being told to go make excuses. It's a tough situation, and I just wish there was more accountability within American politics. And it's like, people know it, this is a situation. It's a lot of factors. It's just not that Biden said the U.S. wasn't going to produce its own oil, things like that. Although that's a whole nother thing. It's not just that. There's other factors. Putin invading is going to raise it a little bit. There's other things that go on. But still, guys, I just wish there was more accountability within American politics. But that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you are following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.